Octahedron is a game that probably takes the platformer name very seriously. In other games in the genre, you simply leap from one ledge to another, occasionally bouncing off the heads of enemies. But here in Octahedron, you're actually creating platforms underneath your feet, using these temporary surfaces to reach places that are otherwise out of your reach. This is where you find the puzzle in this puzzle platformer. You have to use this ability to pull the trigger and create a platform directly beneath your feet to then navigate the levels and reach the end goal. Each platform only has a limited life before it decays and you will end up falling back down to the solid ground or the hazards and enemies waiting below. This keeps you on the move and injects a little urgency to an otherwise kind of relaxed tempo that the game has. These platforms that you make can also move from side to side after being created, letting you cross wide gaps as well as going upwards. You can only create a set number of platforms before you need to have the permanent level surfaces beneath your feet again. Initially you have 2 to use in succession before later earning many more, which gives you a lot more freedom to move around the space that you're given. There's a certain quality to this game that is shared by the likes of Lumines and Rez, with background music that is augmented and grows through the actions of the player. Every time you create a platform, every flower that you pass through and collect, every enemy that you trigger, they all make a particular sound that fits in with the rest of the music. It might not be particularly in time with the rhythm of the beat, unless you actively decide to play to the beat, but it's something that draws you in as a player. Whether that level's soundtrack is trance or something that has a little more in common with the early 90s consoles and arcade chiptunes, you have a hand in its overall sound, and it goes hand in hand with the strobing visual design. It's no surprise that the developer Marco Guardia is a music producer and part of the trance act Flutlicht. It looks like a stereotypical disco made into a video game. The world is dark and yet full of solid structures that are made out of coloured light lines. There's all of these pulsing light bulbs dotted around that you can crash through, turning them into flowers that, when you then pick them up, send ripples of light through the background. It's as though there's this huge LED wall behind you that you're toying with. Your two-dimensional character has got a spinning 3D octahedron for a head, which illuminates the background and sees you leaving a ghostly after image behind you. It's certainly a unique look, and it really stands out from the crowd. If there's one thing I think Octahedron could do a little better, it's introduce you to the controls and the game's fundamentals in a bit more direct fashion. There's a touch too much of the idealism of having no visual cues at all and getting the players to figure out how to jump, create platforms, and all of this by themselves. In practice, it makes the tutorial area an obstacle to overcome instead of simply easing you in and introducing you to the game's core ideas. Even just the opening moments where the character is just constantly falling for a seeming eternity and then some square brackets appear beneath him. It took me a while to figure out that I was meant to start to interact with the game at this point, but what was I meant to press? Was it cross for jump, square, move the sticks around? No, it was actually the trigger to create a platform beneath my feet. When you're dealing with a game that has an atypical set of gameplay ideas, it is a pretty bold move to rely on the player's intuition in this fashion. However, once you have made it through and learnt the basics, the game really comes into its own as you apply those handful of ideas that you've taken on board to the levels before you. They grow and evolve over time quite naturally, adding in new enemies, new things to interact with via the platforms that you create, and eventually these platforms gain new abilities that transform the level design. Completing the first set of levels, you gain a new platform type that shoots down onto the ground below after a second or two of being created. Through this, you can destroy enemies or break through certain parts of the level, opening up new areas and adding a more maze-like structure to the design. It's no longer just about finding the path upwards, with this game having a very vertical design to its levels, but sometimes about backtracking downwards just a little bit to find something else and then make more progress elsewhere. Some of these levels are hard though, especially as they introduce new ideas that you then have to get used to. You have a few hearts that are sapped one at a time as you bump into enemies or hazards before this sets you back to the most recent checkpoint, but for most of the game's first hour or so, this is down to your making mistakes. Then come the birds that spring out of the blocks as you jump past them. Where your platforms could previously stop enemies from attacking you from below, these swarm around and hurt you. The only solution, as I soon learnt, is to simply keep moving, thanks to no longer having a 2-platform limit at that particular time. Once you've learnt how to deal with those, then come the strobing like missile launchers, and there are bound to be plenty more ideas and challenges to overcome throughout the rest of the game. There's an infectious quality to Octahedron, I find, from its music and its visuals through to the ideas running through its puzzle platforming. It's a game that draws you in with some simple new ideas and then evolves them level after level. It's been in development for quite a few years. We actually first previewed this game back in 2014 and then again at last year's EGX Rezzed. But it is coming out in just under a month. It's out on the 20th of March for PlayStation 4, Xbox One and PC, and going off what I've seen of it, this is definitely one to keep an eye on. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Please do like, subscribe and share it with others. You can also come visit us over on thesixthaxis.com for plenty more video games news, previews, reviews and everything else. Hopefully you will join us again soon. Goodbye!